How's it going, everyone? David from dodmedia. Today we're having a look at a question, which is obviously completely unanswerable because it's entirely subjective. But the question is, can you compare and justify a £1,300 lens, the Sigma 50mm f1.2 DGDN, to a lens that is 8 times cheaper, the Sony 50mm f1.8 Nifty 50? Now, the obvious first comparison is just the difference in aperture. This Sigma one is about 1.2 stops faster than the 50mm. So you're going to be getting 1.2 stops of extra light over the 50mm. That's a no-brainer. That's not really a comparison. That's a difference between them. But the question that I am interested in asking is, in practical terms, what does that really mean? What does it mean visually when you look at the difference between a lens that opens to f1.8 and a lens that opens to f1.2? Now, I'm specifically using the Sigma because, as I previously reviewed this lens, it is phenomenal how they have managed to achieve that level of contrast and sharpness wide open at f1.2. The only other lens that I've personally used that opened up to f1.2 full frame lens was the Canon 50mm L, and that lens was horrible wide open at f1.2. You know, it was soft, it lacked contrast. The point of it opening up that wide was completely defeated by how it rendered the image. However, this Sigma one is outstanding. It's sharp throughout its focus range, sharp from edge to edge, you know, extremely little to none chromatic aberration, and yet the depth of field, because it's an f1.2 lens at 50mm, the depth of field is incredible and the bokeh rendering is incredible. And so I put it side by side with the cheap and cheerful plastic Nifty 50. Visually, what is the difference between them? What does it actually mean to let 1.2 stops of light in more than this one? And how does that translate in an image? The second part of the question is then the build quality and the resilience of the lens and how long it's going to last you. I mean, the difference between these is night and day. One is, you know, crafted metal and hard plastic. The other one's just hard plastic. One of them has a fixed barrel, so it's not going to move in and out as it's focusing, whereas this one will move in and out as it's focusing, which is a problem long term because you're going to be drawing dust in and out of there. And eventually the lens will need either a clean or a replacement. Whereas this one has more longevity because it has no moving parts other than what's within the lens. Then there's other factors like the weather sealing. This one is weather sealed, or at least splash sealed and dust sealed, with this little rubber gasket on it, whereas this one, obviously, has nothing. After that, all the other features that are on the lens, like being able to, you know, set your aperture manually and de-click it and all that, I think that's completely pointless, at least for my uses, because I always regulate my aperture in camera, not on the lens. But the only thing that is really useful on this lens that this lens lacks is the ability to just kill your focus motor inside the lens without having to go through the camera menu to turn it into a manual focus lens. So you can just flip that switch. This lens doesn't have that, and I use that a lot. So that would be something that, for me, would be lacking personally. After that, there's the weight of the lenses. Now, obviously, this one weighs a lot more than this one, but to be honest, I don't think it's really that much of an issue. I've never really felt like carrying a small prime lens on a camera body this size was really much of an issue, even for long, long shoots like weddings or events. I get it with zoom lenses. Sure, there you want to factor in the weight of it, and you don't want to kill your neck or your shoulder. You want to get a good shoulder strap like a Black Rapid. But for something like this, honestly, it's negligible. But for people who are, exercised by the weight of their lenses, well, obviously this thing is tiny and it's plastic, and just the difference in size, it's half the length. So that is a factor to consider. Personally, I prefer a longer lens because I'm one of those people who likes to shoot like this. I don't like just holding the camera body. I like to shoot holding the lens. And so shooting with this thing on here feels a little bit like I'm bunching it up right under myself, which I don't like. But as I said in the beginning, that is subjective. In terms of image quality, this is really where you notice the difference. This is where that extra 1.2 stops of light on paper starts actually meaning something when you look at image quality. That's where that thin depth of field becomes razor thin. And so all of your foreground elements and all of your background elements just blow out of focus a little bit more. But also the general aesthetic of that bokeh is a lot smoother. Let me know down in the comments which images you thought looked better between these two, and did you get them right? This one is, it's a beautiful lens, especially considering its price. It's a fantastic lens, but the thing that gets me with it is the bokeh rendering. It's a little bit too pronounced. It's a little bit too harsh. This thing has just incredibly smooth, beautiful bokeh. And so that for me is really the selling point of this. That is what makes it 8 times more valuable than the Sony 50mm Nifty 50, is just that beautiful aesthetic that it gives your image. And that's not necessarily down to the aperture at all. That's down to the quality of the glass elements that are in this lens and the craftsmanship that Sigma have put into creating this lens versus the lens elements that are in the Nifty 50. That to me, it makes this lens worth its value. And in fact, I'm a little bit surprised that it's not more expensive. But hey, that's great. I'm not going to complain there. My verdict on this is, A, you should own this lens. If you don't, buy it, because it's a beautiful entryway into prime lenses at fast apertures if you're coming from using zooms, or if you're just new to photography or videography in general. Then, if your budget allows you to, look at renting one of these for a weekend. Borrow one from a camera shop if they will allow you to do so, and just have a play with it, because you really kind of understand the difference between them when you're using them. It's in the feeling, and I think that's kind of what Sigma's all about. It's about the quality when you are using it, the experience of using it, which they just nail time and time again. Made in their Aizu factory. But of course, if you would just like to buy it, or the Nifty 50, well, there are links to both in the description, which are affiliate links. I really struggled to say the word description when I'm stringing it in a sentence. That's why I had to pause there. There are links to it in the description, which are affiliate links. And doesn't mean you will get charged anything extra, but a commission. Well, I'm phrasing this really weirdly. I won't charge you anything extra, but I'll get a commission of 4 or 5%, something like that, which will help support this studio. Keep it running, keep making these reviews and tutorials. All right, that's it from me. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.